Oh, welcome to The Grove. Shout out to our sponsors, Craze and Friends and Clean Tech Growth Lab. Thank you for making this possible. But without them, it would not be possible to interview awesome people doing awesome things like Quantum. Welcome.
Thank you, Blake. Hello, everyone.
That's right. So we're here in Boston, in the place that it's all happening. Ran into a couple technical difficulties, but we're making it happen because we solve problems, and that's what we do. This has been an episode in the making for about 7 years. Not that Quantum knew that, but so I'm very excited to get into your story. I think what you guys are building is really inspiring and really awesome. That you're deciding to tackle the problems you are. So for everyone that doesn't know yet, if you could give a brief introduction of yourself and what you're building.
Yeah, sure. Well, my name's Quantum Wei, founder and CEO of Harmony Desalting. I'm a mechanical engineer by training, grew up in Virginia, moved up to Massachusetts for school back in 2011. And at Harmony Desalting, we are making water desalination more affordable, more reliable, and more accessible.
So, and also thanks for, we're sharing a mic, so this feels even more intimate as a conversation. So I think before we get into Harmony and that whole journey for you, what were you doing before this became your life? You said you had gone into school. Is this something that spun out of the research? What were you doing before Harmony came into your life?
Yeah. So just about 10 years ago, I started graduate school at MIT and joined a research group focused on desalination. So Harmony didn't really come about until 2019, 2020, but I'd say I feel like the question is pre-desalination, potentially. I guess before then, I was a student, mechanical engineer. I did some work. I joined the race car team at MIT. I had a couple internships at Microsoft working on their Xbox thermal team. Did a short internship at NASA Goddard. But generally, I was working on heat and mass transfer, fluid mechanics, that type of thing.
So then, was it specifically? Had you always wanted to be an engineer? And welcome, got more of the team. What's going on? Hey, good morning. So before you got into desalination, then it seemed like you were very heavily into engineering. Is engineering something you've always wanted to do? Did you get into that at some point?
Probably from pretty early on. I'd say, I declared mechanical engineering as a major. I think my freshman year at MIT. Back in high school, we had these senior tech labs. So I was in the robotics senior tech lab. I always liked, math and physics, liked making things, like doing things with my hands. So, yeah, I'd say engineering is a pretty strong part.
So then when it came to joining the research group around desalination, was there a specific decision to do desalination, or was it just did it feel like a natural progression of where you're at with your career in engineering? Like, did you have a vision for where you wanted to go with engineering, or was it specifically desal? What was that time of your life like?
Yeah, I'd say did not have this really vision of going into desalination, but I think there's sort of two parts. One was, during my undergraduate studies, mechanical engineering is very broad. I think of that decision to join John Lienhardt's group. He was my advisor. Really two big things. One, mechanical engineering is very broad, but I was drawn to, we call it thermal fluids engineering, but basically thermodynamics, heat transfer, fluid mechanics. So I was looking for research. I knew I wanted to do research. I didn't know in exactly what, but I knew, those are the subjects I was good at, that I enjoyed, that I was passionate about. I think water desalination appealed to me for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of the other research groups were doing like micro nanoscale research, stuff that you need to look through a microscope or rely on, sensors to understand what's going on. And I really like, macro scale stuff that you can see and hold with your hands. I think the other thing, just before college, I actually I took a gap year, spent half a year in Western Kenya. I was teaching at a high school, and I lived there, and we had no running water there. So we were reliant on rainwater. We had a cistern to collect that rainwater for all of our, drinking, cooking, cleaning, showering. And, we never ran out of water, fortunately, but the cistern got low at times. So I think that, it sort of gave me a taste of some basic understanding of, how precious our freshwater supplies are.
And you said that gap year was before your grad school?
No, that was actually before undergrad. Yeah.
Okay, so with that context, then desalination wasn't something that was on your radar when you were experiencing that, and so you had this context about the importance of fresh water and the difficulty to get it to some communities. So then, when it came to this research group that included the pieces of mechanical engineering that you were really interested in, it seems like desalination just was a thing that felt like it satisfied this macro interest of yours to have impact, and also this importance in water, and also the engineering aspects to it. So when you started with this research group, again, before I guess the research happened that spurred this company, what was the state of desalination at the time, to whatever extent you were aware of?
Sure, yeah. I think when I first got involved, I understood that the two problems our group was focused on, broadly speaking, one is desalination uses too much energy. And I think that's something I probably knew beforehand going in, just from sort of general knowledge. But the second problem, which I probably knew less about going in, was something called membrane fouling. In desalination, you're often using a membrane to separate the salts, and these membranes work great while they're clean, but the real challenge is the fouling. These membranes get clogged, and then they don't work so well. So a lot of work was focused on this. And there are, all sorts of other problems and challenges, but I'd say those are the two biggest ones.
Were there how long, if you could give some context to a little bit of the history behind desalination, at least in the market. So at the time that you'd entered, just to give context again to when we get into our baby here, where is desalination at? You spoke a little bit to where the technologies were at, but were there large-scale deployments? Were there any, countries or states or regions of the world that were using this to any really important degree? Yeah, these types of things.
Yeah, so I'd say, if we take a step back to 2015, in 2015, desalination is not a new technology, but it, back in 2015, we know how to desalinate water. It's being done all over the world. Actually, back in 2015 was right when the Carlsbad desalination plant, just north of San Diego in the States, opened up, and that was still is the biggest seawater desalination plant in North America. If not the Western Hemisphere. If we look back at the history of desal, I'm a little rusty on the dates, but basically the first big desalination plants were thermally based. So basically, you'd use heat to evaporate water. The salts get left behind, and then you condense the pure water to a liquid form, which is then you're able to drink. And these were the very first plants where these thermal-based systems, and there was a lot of work done to make them more and more efficient. But at the end of the day, you are evaporating water and condensing it. That is inherently a very energy-intensive process. So in the 60s and 70s, 1960s and 1970s, the modern reverse osmosis membrane was invented, developed, and commercialized. And this was, this is a fundamentally different process where you're not evaporating water, but you are pushing with pressure fresh water through a membrane which rejects the salts. And, at first, those RO membranes weren't so good. It was still quite energy intensive, but it was, probably an order of magnitude lower energy compared to the thermal methods. And that technology got better and better. And I'd say starting in the early 2000s is when you start to see these massive desalination plants started to shift over from the thermal-based methods to reverse osmosis. So now, and you have other, innovations along the way. Energy recovery devices came about in the 2000s. If we step to 2015, reverse osmosis is now king, and basically all big new desalination plants use reverse osmosis. But the name of the game is still too expensive in some places. So everyone is focused on making reverse osmosis desalination more affordable, and there are various angles to that. And I'd say, that's sort of where things are at.
Well done. That was awesome. So the last question that I have about that whole arc is just, so within the evolution of how the technologies got better, are there any major milestones, dates? Don't have to worry about that, but are there any other major milestones other than the San Diego application that spoke to people actually putting this into practice outside of 2015, or is that San Diego plant globally one of the biggest applications of desal at this point?
I actually wouldn't characterize the San Diego plant as maybe. I think that's sort of relevant to, here in Boston, here in the States, that's relevant to us as an audience. But if you look at the desalination industry, it's maybe not that important. Certainly it's the biggest seawater plant in the States. But I'd say we think about advancements in reverse osmosis from a technology point of view. The membranes got much better. They were sort of really invented in the 70s, but they were pretty crappy compared to today's membranes. And I think that was, a bunch of steady improvements. There are a couple big improvements, which, again, a little rusty on, so can't speak to that. But essentially the membranes from the 70s to now have gotten loads better. And that is probably the biggest impact. Globally, yes. Yeah. Early 2000s were when these energy recovery devices or pressure exchangers started to see a lot of improvement. And essentially, maybe to take a step back in the 70s, reverse osmosis was extremely energy inefficient compared to now for two reasons. One is the membranes were poor. The second one is there was a lot of brine energy that was being wasted. And, you can recycle that brine energy, but it was really in the early 2000s that these pressure exchangers were invented, and they really stepped up the efficiency of recycling that brine energy. So that, to me, in terms of seawater desalination, really the biggest step change outside of the membranes being improved. Yeah.
All right, so thank you for that context. So I thought it was really important to get an understanding of where things were at by the time that Quantum joined this research group and was researching this new technology, I assume, or some attempt at furthering the desal technology that was out there. So at the point in time where you were there and you joined this group, at what point did it turn into, okay, we have something that could make an impact? And also, I think an interesting caveat, as a college student, I got to watch Quantum present on the early versions of what this technology is at an MIT Water Summit. So that's really cool for me. I've been a fan for a long time. But so at what point, either at that point that I got to see you, or at some other point, when you were doing the research, when did this turn into something where you said, maybe this is a company, maybe this needs to be commercialized? Yeah, we'll start there.
Sure. So I started working on this technology, this batch desalting process in 2017. So I joined the research group for a couple of years. I worked on another variant, this two-stage process for the first couple years. Really sort of learned about reverse osmosis fundamentally, but then finished up my master's degree and then picked up this new project, which was kind of related to what we're working on. And for me, 2017, that was a transition from really theoretical work to experimental work. So basically my task, I inherited this project from students before me. They, had invented the process, they'd modeled the process, and their model found that, this was the most energy efficient way to do desalination. So my task was then to take this bench scale prototype that would fit, 6-foot lab bench and get it up and running. So basically translate the idea from paper to prototype. So, and I had never really, operated a pump or a motor or a VFD before. All this piping and plumbing was new to me. We had sensors, valves, and DACs, so it went pretty slowly. I think it took me about a year. I wasn't starting from nothing. Basically, all the equipment was there. But it probably took me about a year to get the thing up and running and then starting to collect the data. But by 2019, had some results, which you might have seen some of those earlier results if I presented in 2018. But in 2019, I went to a conference. It was the American Membrane Technology Association, their annual conference in New Orleans. And I presented these results basically on the energy efficiency of our prototype, showed that they matched the model that the students before me had worked on. And, the results were good. But, more importantly at this conference, it's an interesting mix between academia and industry. So, saw at the time some other desalination process startups, commercializing these processes and really trying to solve this problem that I saw all these presentations about this brine problem. When you've got a desalination plant that is inland away from the coast, any desalination process is going to generate some brine, and the question is, what do you do with that brine? It's very expensive to dispose of if you don't have the ocean to put it back into. So all of this focus, whether it's chemical companies, process companies, is on reducing the brine volumes. And I knew that we had our little prototype back at MIT that was working well. And I thought we could do what we were doing better than some of these other companies. So I remember speaking to a couple other grad students at the conference, thinking, oh, maybe I should start a company. And then I came back, met with my advisor, and I remember, very first thing I told him was, I want to go and commercialize this.
Okay, so one of my favorite questions to ask is that is such a fascinating threshold to me, in people's lives when you are faced with the opportunity to enter something that is the hardest, or arguably one of the hardest things that somebody could do, or they could choose to pursue, which is entrepreneurship, and especially entrepreneurship in something that is as technical and new to the market as desalination or the technology that you're developing. And so at this point, you saw that there's an opportunity. You spoke to your advisor, and you thought to yourself, okay, maybe this is something I should start commercialize. Why? Why did you choose to jump into something that was as unstable, when if you felt passionately about the impact that we were speaking to before with the access to fresh water, the opportunity that desalination, you could have chosen to join another team. You could have chosen to take something that was more stable, but you chose to start your own company. So what did that mean to you? Why did you choose to do that?
I think of two things when you ask that question. I mean, one is it wasn't a foreign concept to me. So as an MIT student, maybe particularly as an MIT graduate student, I had seen others. Entrepreneurship maybe is not the norm, but it's pretty common, I'd say. Back in undergrad, our graduate RA, he was involved in Greentown Labs, very early, so sort of got exposed to that. Knew a lot of engineers who worked at startups as I started my graduate studies. Saw a lot of other graduate students in my lab or in our department, take a promising technology and try and start a business with it. We have these pitch competitions that we'd attend. I'd attended at there's the MIT Water Innovation Prize, the Clean Energy Prize. So I guess it was presented, through my environment as a viable career option. I think the second thing is, yes, you could join another team, but I forget when this happened, but I feel, definitely over the course of my graduate career, sort of got to understand how, a lot of technological innovation starts at the university lab, but getting it out into the market where it can make an impact in the real world, that is, there are a lot of things that have to happen along the way, and it's sort of this tortuous path. But I think, to me, and I think others would agree, probably you probably see more success by having entrepreneurs start a company based on the technology, and there's a benefit to a smaller startup working to commercialize the technology versus being placed within a big large corporation and sort of incubating a technology. So
then some quick questions then about the beginning of that. So let's just say at whatever point you would define, okay, I'm doing it. Harmony Desalting is a company, and I'm pursuing it. What were the first year, 2 years like? How much of it was fundraising, grant prizes? At what was the environment like as far as how you were prioritizing your time between building a team or fundraising like we spoke about, or developing the technology further? How are you thinking about scaling the company in the early years?
So I'd say, you think of maybe the first couple years as being 2020, 2021. I was still a graduate student at the time. So, there was still work to do to finish my thesis. The work was focused on developing this technology. So, that certainly took up a lot of my time. But we were also interested in developing the business. So, early 2021, right in January, decided to join a couple of these pitch competitions. It was kind of sort of natural progression. But needed a team, for some of these pitch competitions, and I wanted to work with others, so I actually teamed up with a couple other MIT students at the time. And, initially it was the three of us working together as a team, trying to develop the business idea, go out and talk to customers, learn about what customers wanted. So it was basically us working together for about a year. We were also tried fundraising at the time. A lot of the responses we got were, this prototype's a bit small. You haven't operated on the real water yet. So, keep working on it and come back later.
So, beautiful. So, at what point did you make... At what point did you hit a scale that was significant enough that you felt like, you were getting these responses that were too small? At what point was the first time where you said this is something significant that we could bring to a conversation like that?
Probably coming out of school. So coming out of school, we won some money, part of this prize competition to build a larger prototype. So we went from... Yeah. So basically the first year out of school for me, 2021 to 2022, we built a prototype, which was actually, probably about the same size as this one that's behind us. And that would produce about, 1 gallon per minute of fresh water. And yeah, this is sort of the scale where people, and I think it's about the scale where people took us more seriously, but we also took that system as part of this competition to a real site, operating on real water, not lab-made water, and also operating on real tough water. And fortunately, as part of this contest, we sort of had this spotlight. I mean, it was competitive. So there were 5 teams that took their prototypes to operate on the same water, and the way the judging worked was pretty objective. Whichever team made the most water won, and our team won. So, yeah, I'd say that was a big turning point for sure.
So based on where you were at that point and where you're at now, how much has changed?
A lot, yeah. Since 2022 to now, I guess has been 3 years. I mean, back then it was just me at the time with Harmony, and now we've grown the team to 7 people now. So, we've gone through a couple of facilities. We were back then I'd go out to Olin College 2 days a week where we'd build this prototype in Emily's sort of tight lab space. Now we're in Chelsea at the Fitzgerald Shipyard. We've got a lot more space. We've got pilots. We've now deployed pilots all around the world. We're scaling up. I've learned so much. So,
well, then, just a quick question. I think there's a lot. We can, and hopefully we'll have an entire episode about this, but if you could just choose maybe 2 things that come to your mind as far as what you have learned in these 3 years about what it means to scale a company, specifically in the desalination space, in the climate tech space, in a very technology intensive space, however you want to take that, but just 2 things that would come to your mind as far as what you've learned as far as building this company.
That's a tough question. Let's see. 2 things I've learned. Maybe one would be you can get a lot done with less than you might think you need. I feel like sort of the constant theme for me, thinking back to like 2020 when we were, it was three of us, and we'd go talk to investors. We never really hit the targets that we wanted to hit in terms of raising money. But, we have found a way to keep going regardless. And the things that we're working on now, I would not have thought back then that we'd be where we are right now so quickly.
So if there were points in time where you weren't hitting those numbers and there was a certain amount of resources you thought you needed, but it turns out you didn't, then why was it never the right time to stop?
Why was it never the right time to stop? I mean, I think, and maybe this goes back to the question, why start this company and why not join, a bigger team? I guess I sort of, when you work on something that's so specialized, I think at some point I realized, this technology we're working on, at that time, I'm probably one of about, 5 people in the world who know this technology, super intimately, and sort of felt I had this responsibility to, if you don't do it, maybe nobody, who else will? So sort of felt this responsibility to work towards getting this out there. Yeah, does that answer?
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you choose to interpret it that way. Because there's a lot of different ways that, I think there's a lot of ways, a lot of reasons why people build companies, and I'm most inspired by the people that see that there's a responsibility involved and feel driven by that responsibility. So I love that. I love that answer. So the last couple, my last 2 questions that I love to ask is the first thing, where you're at now, where Harmony is now. What is the biggest hurdle that you guys are facing, and how is it also an opportunity?
So, I mean, where we're at now is, I suppose, we sort of think this as phase 2 of our demonstration and development and demonstration phase. So first couple years, we did a couple of, smaller field demonstrations. They were short-term things. I mean, we got good results. But now we're really focused on, we've improved the engineering of our systems. We're really getting into long-term demonstrations. And we're really collecting the data that we think our customers need to see. So I'd say looking at our biggest hurdle and opportunity, I mean, it's hard to choose one. I think probably we are we're a growing team. We've got, folks who are learning new skills, learning a new industry, and our business necessarily needs to evolve. So, we're wrapping up this development and demonstration phase. In order to keep going, we need to really transition away from the development and demonstration and into, really commercial operations, where we are selling systems to customers and delivering on those systems. And I think the challenge and opportunity is, it's people who are going to make that happen. So, sort of growing the team in a way where we can, evolve from, learn how to shift from this demonstration development phase to really commercial operations and serving our customers. That's a challenge.
Huge opportunity. That's great. So with all of this work that needs to be done, with the challenges that you're facing, the responsibility you feel, What inspires you to keep going?
I mean, I think the work has got to be fun. So for me, I'm learning something new almost every day. I think every day you're doing something new, and I just love, the people you work with. Yeah, just having fun and learning, I think, is what keeps me up every day.
Well, I had so much fun, and I learned so much. So this is inspiring for me. So what's the best for anyone that was also inspired to either follow along or get in touch? What's the best way to do that?
Well, you can head to our website, harmonydesalting.com. Our email is there. General email is water@harmonydesalting.com. My email is quantum@harmonydesalting.com. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. We post updates there as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing this mic here.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Blake.
You got it.
Cheers.